Hi, everyone. I'm Tasha with Awake, Healthy, and Informed. And I also have a video series called Naturally Inspired, where we bring information to the community on various topics from experts and other people that are knowledgeable within our community. And December is Ask the Doctors Month for sanitizing safety. So we've been on this journey at this point for about 2 months now. So November was Child Safety Month. And so we're continuing that conversation about sanitizing safely and sanitizing safety into this month with our Ask the Doctors series. And so because December, where we know that cold and flu season is here amongst COVID, it has driven up sales 52%. So we're going to be kind of discussing some of those things. Where does sanitizing safely and PPE fit in? And then what are natural and eco-friendly alternatives to traditional toxic products? Today, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Christian Shaw. Thank you so much for being here. He is a medical doctor and he also holds a PhD. He is going to be speaking about, are masks effective? Why is there so much emphasis on hand hygiene? We're going to hear about his experience as a healthcare practitioner with hand and hygiene products, his perspective on testing, quarantine, sanitizing public and private spaces, and personal sanitizing and PPE. And let me go ahead and formally introduce both of the guests that I have today. Dr. Christian Shaw, he's board certified in public health and general and preventive medicine. He has a subspecialty board certification in addiction medicine. He holds a certification in integrative medicine. He has a PhD in neurological sciences. And then my good friend, Jessica Chandler, that I've been on this journey with now since August in various capacities. She's a community activist. She's the former president of autoimmune research and a diagnostics company that sets standards with the National Institute of Health, or the NIH, and more. And then I am your host, Tasha Jackson, of Awake, Healthy, Informed, Naturally Inspired, but I'm also a K through 12 educator. As many of you know, I hold a master's degree in education. I have been a teacher for over 10 years and lots of classroom experience for me. So thank you so much, both of you, for being here with me.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation, Tasha.
Thanks. And so we'll go ahead and get started. So hand hygiene guidance is to use alcohol-based sanitizers for addressing COVID-19, but we're experiencing many issues that have resulted in overuse, either intentionally, unintentionally, people just not being aware, educated about what is in hand sanitizers. They're not all created equal. So again, continuing that discussion, PPE is mandated now in many places around the country. I live in Arizona and it is in certain spaces here, not all spaces. And so we'll be speaking about that. And then Dr. Shaw, we're going to go ahead and start with you. And so elephant in the room, $1 million question, are masks effective?
So that's a great question. It's not absolutely straightforward. There is a lot of research to suggest that they may have some limited degree of affection against transmission of COVID-19. However, there has been a recent study that I think a lot of individuals have jumped on from, I believe it was Belgium, that went so far as to say it had no effect. From my perspective, I think just intuitively, if you assume the fact that the vast majority of transmission is in an aerosolized state, meaning the virus in and of itself isn't just suspended in the air, it is part of these compositions of water molecules. And so if that is then spread in some way by coughing, sneezing, to a less extent, with speaking and breathing, you would assume just kind of rationally that if you had some type of a barrier device, it's going to block some degree of that kind of transmission. Now, the question is, well, since viruses are far smaller in their size and can pass through the barrier of the vast majority of protections, masks that people are wearing, then that's an excellent point. But I think if we look at it just kind of as a summary type of statement on the subject, I would say overall there could be some limited protective benefit, but I think that it's been touted far too much.
And I think also there's this idea that that has been perpetuated, at least from my point of view, is that it's the only thing in conjunction with hand hygiene, but there are actually a myriad of things that people should be doing in order to have prevention. And it's just one tool in the toolbox. And I don't think that that's being spoken about, is that we have to be doing lots of different things and then utilizing this as a part of that. But I think many people have come under this impression, or that there's this perception of it's the thing. We have to do that one thing.
So that's an excellent point. And to build on it, I actually just circulated this paper today, again, a study out of Belgium. And what they had determined is the mortality rate for individuals that are admitted to hospital, so obviously those that are quite sick with COVID, is 4 times as great as someone who does not have a vitamin D deficiency. And this was an independent risk factor, so they were able to separate it from the increased risk factors of other immunocompromised states, cancer, cardiovascular issues, diabetes, etc. And you don't hear anything about this type of encouragement at a public health policy level, like for people to try to increase their vitamin D intake through supplementation. Clearly, most of us can't get out in the sun right now because we're into the winter months soon. But there's no message from that kind of preventive aspect. The idea that exercise and healthy diets are going to improve the immune system. You don't hear anything about that. In fact, we've done the reverse. We've isolated individuals away from these opportunities. And I think, if anything, that has promoted a lot of mood problems, certainly depression. We've seen skyrocketing mental health incidences in the country. And again, having a depressed state actually depresses your immune system function.
Right.
So I think that the question I would have for our group is why is there such a limited focus on just the idea of wearing masks and enforcing them to such an extent when there's so many additional and arguably better ways to protect people against COVID infection?
Yeah, I agree. And even whenever it first came out as a widespread thing, that was I think one of the very stark things for me was that, why are we not talking about immune boosting herbs? Why are we not talking about how we can better integrate plant medicine? Why are we not talking about safe ways to play at the park? My kids, I take my kids out. We're outdoor people, so we can't be indoors. And so we found safe ways to go to the park and still get out and get exercise. And of course, in Arizona, we have plenty of sunshine. And so, again, I think that's an important point that should be emphasized, is that, the mask is just a tool in the toolkit, and we need to look at these other alternatives and not alternatives, other means to boost our immune system and be protected. And then that way, whenever we have education, we're not so fearful, right? I think there's also this element of fear as well. And so, my son goes to school and my daughter stays home. And of course, there is a huge emphasis on hand hygiene and hand washing, and they wash their hands often. And so why is there such an emphasis on hand washing and hand hygiene?
So, your guess is as good as mine on that. I think it's just become, or has been, kind of the mantra, the bread and butter of health practices, hygiene, always wash your hands. There's certainly, in a limited extent, meaning limited is people normally not having good hand hygiene to start having to wash their hands, let's say a couple times a day. And then if they happen to have some concerning actual exposure, wash them additional times. But just to emphasize this relentless hand washing campaign, it raises concern to me because, first of all, there has not been a documented case of COVID in a fecal oral transmission. And so what exactly are we preventing against, but with this aggressive hand washing? The concern normally would be if you had some type of a germ that was transmitted by getting on your hands, your fingers, and then you put your hands to your mouth, you eat, et cetera, then you could understand there might be a rationale. But because the overwhelming majority of transmission of COVID is in an aerosolized state, why emphasize this? Moreover, consider that every time you wash your hands, and we haven't even got into the actual alcohol disinfection, just using soap and water over time, you're going to start to remove protective layers of your skin. And what happens then? You've exposed it to potential infections with surface bacteria that lives on all of us. And so I really caution that overemphasis. And then when we move into the next discussion about the hand sanitizers, I mean, the alcohol content is extremely abrasive over time compared to even a gentle soap. So what are we really doing? What do we want to accomplish here? Maybe we need to rethink our strategies.
And I just want to remind anyone who's watching that we spoke about skin and immunity last week with Dr. Emmanuel. And so if anyone is interested in watching that video from last week, I would encourage everyone to do so, because he speaks very specifically to what happens whenever you strip the skin of its protective layer, and then now you're even more susceptible. And so overwashing and also choosing the correct soaps to use, because that's also very important. And also using lukewarm water instead of hot water to wash hands is the best protection that you can have for your skin in that case. And so what are your experiences with these protocols as a healthcare practitioner?
Well, fortunately, I am not in the hospital setting, so my comments can only reflect that of outpatient medical settings. So I oversee multiple drug and alcohol treatment centers. I'm also a consultant physician to a corporation within the energy industry. And so we have had to work within the realm of occupational medicine, OC Health, with dealing in this measure for quite some time. And we would encourage, or we do encourage, hand washing techniques, but not at the extent of jeopardizing this skin barrier that you were referring to and the other physician spoke about last week. Much more responsible, thoughtful hand washing using very non-abrasive, gentle soaps. In terms of actual hand sanitizers, advocating use as needed and trying to find those that have some moisturizing component within it, because ultimately you really want to try to protect the skin as you are disinfecting it. So that's what we've done so far. And I try to emphasize in a certain extent the awareness that we have these procedures where we're focusing on hand washing or wearing masks, but let's kind of consider the actual air around. Let's try when possible to have circulating air, doors open, so we're clearing out the air in these closed spaces. I mean, just really common sense stuff like that will be helpful.
As you were speaking, I was remembering whenever I used to teach history about the Black Death or the plague, and everyone was shuttered in, and that actually contributed.
Right.
Largely because, keep the doors and windows closed and no sunlight. And, obviously in medieval England, they didn't have ceiling fans, and so that just kind of, I went back to that space of, no, we still need to be, opening the window, the doors, getting sunlight, breathing in fresh air, especially now that there's less pollution, right? Enjoy it.
And that is kind of the irony, of course, I'm sure people spoke of and will continue to, is that, COVID has been just devastating to all of us in some way or another, but the environment seems to have benefited in some respect. And it's kind of remarkable how quickly the environment can kind of bounce back when it's let alone to regenerate, even for short periods of time. It's kind of remarkable.
Yes. So, this is the holiday season, and I've also done my share of traveling. And just out of respect for the people that I was coming into contact with, of course, I got tested before. Myself and my kids got tested before we traveled. And then, of course, whenever we came home. But what is your perspective on testing?
No, that's a tough question, especially off the top of my head. See if I can collect some thoughts on it. I think it has benefit, and if it has to do with either a risk stratification approach. So, for example, to illustrate that would be, hey, I'm going to go visit my parents, and they're 85 years old and have multiple health issues. I want to make sure that I am not currently carrying or potentially infective, because these are much higher risk individuals and I do not want to harm them. Similarly, if someone is psychologically concerned and upset enough that it is creating, in my perspective, limitations in their day-to-day functioning, because they are just so obsessed with this concern, and they're going to find relief in having some type of testing done to confirm they're negative, or I guess positive, then in that respect, I think it's helpful. When you apply it towards the concept of mass testing, I think that is not a very useful surveillance strategy. It's capturing one moment in time. Yeah. You could test a person, and then several hours later they may become infected. It just does not seem to be a useful approach from more of a population health perspective. So the short answer is, I think focused, intelligent testing is very useful. However, there are obviously, depending on the test, is degrees of false positive results, false negative results, which people have to be aware of. So for example, a false negative result would mean that you tested and it said that you were negative for COVID, but actually you had COVID. And then obviously the reverse, or the opposite, I should say, that you tested positive for COVID, and actually, in fact, you are not positive for COVID. And so all tests have these margins of error, but individuals need to be mindful that this kind of can have some impact on whether, how you return to the workplace, how it affects you psychologically, how it might interrupt your travel plans. So that's another kind of devil's advocate, comment to the whole testing process.
So mindfulness and intention is how we should be going about this.
As most things.
Yes. So there's difference. Let's talk about PPE for a second, because you will go out in public and you will see bedazzled masks. You will see clear face shields, either down over the face or just covering the bottom half of the face, but mostly it's open. You'll see people wearing like these, I don't know, turtleneck looking things over. I mean, there's such a wide array. Bandanas, some people, they don't have a mask. So I've seen them do like evil, sinister person walking through the store. There's all of these different things that people are doing. Is there one thing that's more effective than another, or one thing that you would suggest doing over another thing?
Well, it's tough to say. I mean, the standard still, and the vast majority of us, myself included, would be an N95. And people aren't walking around wearing N95 masks, which tested, and they have the barrier designed to prevent against the size of a viral particle to pass through. Those not only were in short supply, but they're just not practical. They're very uncomfortable, and they're, you have to trade them out, keep using new ones, and they're expensive overall, given these considerations. So then we look at, okay, well, if everything else is just not as good, and then varying levels of, is there even a point in you utilizing that? And so I would say anything that provides some degree of a barrier protection is going to be mildly helpful, especially the more don't know the right adjective for it, but essentially the stronger the barrier is of that specific mask. So if someone wears, for a simplistic example, if you have a really old thin T-shirt, it's stretched out, and you use that's probably gonna have a lot more pores and openings than someone using one of these, or what's the word I'm looking for? Those pull-up turtleneck looking things that you're commenting on that probably have they're pretty dense material. So I think if you're focused, you got to reconcile, well, the denser the material is probably better, but then I need to be able to functionally breathe out of this, so I don't have to pull it down every few minutes because it's so difficult to take in air through. And then with your comment about the face shields, I don't really appreciate that. I think if you're wearing a mask underneath the face shield, that's great. You're doubly, I mean, I'm not using that quantifiably, but just colloquially, you're doubly protected, I guess. So if someone just coughs an amount of phlegm right in your face, you got that shield blocking you. And then if some comes through, you got the mask. But the idea that you wear that shield and you don't wear a mask, well, somehow I think that the air can kind of go around that shield in that gap between the shield and your face. And so I don't think it has much value.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking, especially the ones that are kind of really open at the bottom. And then I'm going to use this next one to lead into Jessica's, the questions that I have for Jessica. So people are becoming very creative with how they are personally sanitizing. I remember going to the grocery store, and I'm not an alcohol drinker, but you walk past the alcohol aisle. And I remember at the beginning, it was completely empty. And I asked the lady at the register, I said, what are people doing besides drinking it? And she was like, they're making their own hand sanitizers. So can you speak to some of the things that people are doing to create their own sanitizing methods, and maybe kind of give some remediation or some helpful tips of, if people are choosing to sanitize at home, how to do it safely?
Is this for me or Jessica?
That's for you. Yes. Yeah. And then I'm going to use that one to lead into Jessica's questions.
I think that need to operate under, what exactly you're trying to sanitize. The idea of using excessive Clorox wipes that are very, chemically rich, so to speak, over and over on your countertops without wearing gloves, so that it's going to be removing that protective barrier of your skin that we spoke of, is probably excessive. Going back to the same reason that just as you're not really transmitting the virus through a fecal oral route, you're probably not going to have too much concern if your countertop hasn't been wiped off, regularly using these stronger agents. But with respect to endorsing specific kind of homemade types of disinfectants. I mean, you would really have to kind of go back and do some searches on kind of proven natural herbal based antiseptics that you could probably dilute out to be able to clean countertops if you're so inclined, those that you may be able to use on your skin. But off the top of my head, I don't have any specific that I could recommend. I could say that if you're buying a bunch of vodka for the purpose of pouring it over your hands so it will somehow evaporate and sanitize your hands, it's probably not the best approach, and you could figure out something else.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do, is educate people on what is safe. And, people come up with ideas and I appreciate that innovation, but at the same time, we need to go about these things in a safe and logical way. And again, Dr. Emmanuel spoke about some things last week, exactly to your point of plant-based, research-based, natural methods of sanitizing. And there's, lots of alternatives out there, and we'll speak to some of those with Jessica. And so
I just wanted to add, just before we switch topics, that there, just because, and I think this is common sense, but just to reiterate, just because this is a natural product does not mean that if you overuse it, it's not going to have similar effects. So tea tree oil is a great antiseptic, but if I kept rubbing my hands, especially with a high concentration of it, I would cause some serious damage. So you need to be mindful. Need to do the right research. And I think there's plenty of websites that go into some good detail and can educate individuals to find natural products that do offer that type of antiseptic and sanitation-based property that you want without risking any kind of adverse effects to you or your family.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that as well, because again, people are like, oh, it's all natural. Let's, slather my hands in like clove oil. No, don't do that. We're not recommending that. We're not saying that. So Jessica, in the absence of soap and water, it's recommended to use hand sanitizer. But as we have seen, there are growing issues with that. And so can you speak to some of the research around that and what some of the dangers are?
Oh, absolutely. I sure can. This has been quite the journey this year so far with sanitizingsafety.com and what we are discovering and have discovered. One of the interesting aspects with what has been going on is there is one poison control center study that states that 35% of the hand sanitizer is being ingested in schools. So what we have is, aside from this COVID going on, is we now have a minor issue that's not so minor anymore, where the children are actually drinking, ingesting these scented and flavored sanitizers. So that's kind of a really, really, really big issue that we want to point out to everybody out there, is becoming aware that, our kids are drinking this stuff. Adults drink it. So I'm sure Dr. Shaw is aware that they can, in the various medical facilities and stuff, that patients have been known to ingest the sanitizer in order to become intoxicated while they're having their stays for treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we were talking before the show started, and I was just trying to look it up while you were talking about that, Jessica, that on December 1st, there was a study published in the British Medical Journal, which documented this alarming increase in hand sanitizer attributed poisonings, the most significant of which appear to be those that are in the psychiatric aspect of medical care. And as I said, apparently in the United Kingdom alone, the study took place. Alcohol-based hand sanitizer reported poisonings jumped 157% from January 1st to September 16th, from 2019 to 398 to, I'm sorry, let me say that again. There was an increase of 157% when comparing the rates of poisoning between January 1st and September 16th between 2019 and 2020. And then they bring up a specific case study where there was actually a death due to a 30-year-old woman detained in a psychiatric unit, found dead in her hospital bed with a container of hand sanitizing gel beside her. They say that the gel was readily accessible to patients on the ward from a communal dispenser, and patients were allowed to fill cups or other containers with it and keep it in their room. And I won't go into details, but her blood alcohol level was absurdly high and leading to her death. And so that's just one example of this stuff. And I know you have a lot more specific research knowledge in terms of in the pediatric community, the children, and Tasha, you as well, where they're encouraged
Yep.
Yes.
to have to use this 20 times a day. I think
Yep.
it's on your site, Jessica.
Oh my goodness. On the website, sanitizingsafety.com, there is a plethora of information. So not just what I'm going to be discussing, but there is so much more that is available to everybody, citing links, all the research, everything is all there as well. One of the aspects that you mentioned, Dr. Shaw, is that the FDA has recalled a variety of products, and that includes scented products. It includes flavored products. It includes methanol and propanol-based alcohol. So when you start ingesting these alternatives to what's been traditionally utilized, ethanol ingested is toxic, very, very toxic. You can corroborate that, doctor. Even propanol. So we have had deaths occur. However, what's really, really fascinating is the FDA is unable to recall these products. So once they are actually here, they can't recall them. The manufacturer and the importer, it's their job, their duty to recall these products. However, the FDA cannot. They can just issue the warnings. So we actually have provided that list on the website as well. But you're going to have to be watchful with what you're actually purchasing. Look at what you've got going on. I can remember not too long ago being in a CVS just before Halloween, and they had a big, giant, it looked like a 55-gallon drum full of scented hand sanitizers, little 1-ounce ones with cute, colorful pictures all over them, right next to all the candy. So I can imagine, some kids, especially young kids, coming along, Tasha, you've got kids. I've had kids. I don't know if you have kids, Dr. Shaw. However, there's a lot of people out there who do. And our kids, if they smell something, they think that it should go in their mouth. Yeah. Or if it's got like a neat, watermelon picture on it or candy picture on it or whatever, they're going to think that they should be eating this stuff. They may not even know, even at a young age, what parents, we tell our kids all the time to, don't put that in your mouth. But hey, when it's, put in their backpack and it looks all cute, you know what? That little 1-ounce container now with this whole COVID situation going on, it contains anywhere between 140 to 160 proof alcohol. in 1 ounce per FDA guideline recommendations now. That's tragic. And at that young of an age, especially if they start drinking it, that's toxic, which is why we have all the reports coming out of the poison control calls are coming from schools and the kids ingesting.
And parents may not be aware of how children or students are ingesting. And so I can speak from my own personal experience with cough syrup. I had some of my students that, we've talked about this many times, but I just want to keep reiterating, this is how these kids are ingesting these things that you would think, like, who would drink it? It's so strong, right? Well, just like with
there used to be a song about it.
They make a little cocktail with it. Yeah. And so you just take the contents of the bottle from the hand sanitizer, you dump it into whatever soda or Kool-Aid or whatever other very strongly flavored that tastes good thing. You mix it together, you make a little cocktail, and you drink it. Especially because the last 3 years I was teaching 8th grade. Especially in middle school, they are experimenting with smoking and alcohol use. And so that's what they're doing. And so parents really need to be aware of, yes, you may be sending just a 1 ounce bottle with your child, but so are the parents of all of their friends. And if you get enough of those little 1 ounce bottles together, that's a great party to have on the bus. And and again, that I'm speaking from personal experience that happened last school year, before spring break. So again,
I've also discovered that one of the interesting things is our skin is the largest organ that we have. So when you are rubbing your 160 proof alcohol sanitizer on your skin over and over and over, you can actually elevate your blood levels. In fact, I have a personal reference of somebody who tested positive for alcohol when all they had been doing was out with girlfriends shopping all day. But because of the massive amount of alcohol use, alcohol sanitizer use, she tested positive.
So Jessica, what are some of the safer alternatives? Let's go ahead and talk about that, because again, actually that's the most exciting part for me. What are these? How do we fix this? We have this problem. What is the solution? How do we fix this? How do we get everyone to live more safely and more mindfully?
Yes. Okay. Well, it's a big, long word. It's quaternary ammonium compounds. QAC is the abbreviation. You can call it a quat, quack, whatever is going to work for you to remember it. However, what you need to know about that is it is an organic salt. So we have one product. It contains benzalkonium chloride, BZK, and that has been around it was discovered, I believe, about 100 years now, and it's been utilized safely for over 90 years. It's a salt. I mean, yes, it can be manufactured in the lab as well. However, it is a naturally occurring organic salt, which is kind of cool. And they use it in products such as baby wipes. So the key word about that particular product, BZK, benzalkonium chloride, is it is organic. It's a naturally occurring thing. Now, what's also very, very fascinating about these products and this type of material is it lasts long. How long does it last? Okay, well, it's water-based, and it lasts on your hands up to 4 hours. can also spray it on or apply it to surfaces, and it can last up to 28 days, which is very, very cool. When you utilize an alcohol-based sanitizer, in order for an alcohol-based sanitizer to work, it is only effective when it's wet. So once it dries, it's not any good. This actually remains on your hands, or it remains on surfaces accordingly. So on the hands, when you're using the hand version, it'll last up to 4 hours. It actually softens your skin too over time and use. And 28 days on the surface. That's a really, really long time for those who want to take, trying to eliminate as much as they possibly can for the length of time that they possibly can.
So all moms with infants or kids with diapers are like, yes, because Jessica, what are we used to wipe everything? Baby wipes.
Baby wipes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Everything. I know, and then you're buying, the organic baby wipes. You got to read everything that's in that. And this product stuff, it's non-toxic. It's water-based. There's no alcohol in it whatsoever. So that makes it incredibly exciting as a parent to actually have this product available.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it should be in schools instead of the other as well. I mean, when you have kids who are having to be in these situations now where they're forced to use these sanitizers, whether it's an alcohol based or otherwise, when you've got little, kindergarten, pre-K kids and all of that, and they're rubbing alcohol sanitizers all over themselves repeatedly day after day after day. I mean, Dr. Shaw already mentioned what it does to the skin. However, it's going through the skin and ultimately going to be processed also by the liver as well, because it is alcohol.
Right, certainly. And I don't think that when they were originally approving use of hand sanitizers, there wasn't the expectation that children were going to be using them 15, 20 times a day, which, as you said, there's transdermal absorption of the alcohol. And over time, that can lead to a very real dose of alcohol in the system. I think the idea probably was, well, if it's intermittently used, maybe once, twice a day, maybe not even that, it's not going to be much of an issue. But now if it's consistently used as practiced, mandated by schools, at least 5, 10, 15 times a day, you got some serious health concerns associated with that.
And so I would urge parents, because the teacher always puts a supply list together, and always what's on it is a huge enormous is what I like to call it, huge enormous size hand sanitizer. And so again, look for these alternatives that are out there, and then present that to the teacher instead of, buying an alcohol-based one. Again, these alternatives are there. Visit sanitizingsafety.com. There's recommendations on there as well, because what's also on that list are always Clorox wipes, other wet ones, hydrogen peroxide wipes. And so we've seen during this pandemic that consumer sales are up 52%. So, Jessica, can you speak to some of the products a little bit? And maybe, again, we've already spoken about one alternative, go young kid moms. You're already ahead of the curve. But what are some things that people may not know about, especially bleach and chlorine-based traditional sanitizing and disinfecting products, especially now that we are absolutely overusing them in schools?
Oh, yes. Well, one of the really, really interesting things is I have had research and diagnostic laboratory for over 22 years. And I have utilized everything from the chlorine and the bleach, chlorine, which bleach, same thing, one and the same, to various high content alcohol for cleaning my various instruments, surfaces, and things like that, to this BZK organic material as well. And what happens is when you're utilizing things such as the chlorine and bleach products, you have almost a false sense of security in that the effectiveness really actually only lasts about 24 hours. This information that I'm providing is also on the website. All the research and all the reports are there as well. So the website, again, is sanitizingsafety.com, and you are welcome to go there and acquire all this information as well and do your research, which is always recommended from us. But when you're utilizing chlorine bleach, you have a variety of different aspects that need to be taken into consideration. What happens if you get some of this on your clothes? Well, you bleach out your clothes. If you get it on your carpet, if you get it on different fabrics and furnitures, depending upon your surfaces, you could end up destroying your surfaces by taking the coatings and layers off of it and creating a massive toxic goo from it. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. Obviously, yes. You can tell I have.
Because it's the corrosive material.
It absolutely is. And then you also have the fumes. So when you are inhaling chlorine fumes, that is actually very damaging to the lungs. I don't know if you've ever read the poison control warnings on the containers, but it says use in a well-ventilated area. And there's a reason why, is because it can actually burn your lungs. And then you end up with something way more serious going on for, potentially the rest of your life, with minor respiratory ailments to, actually something really, really, really severe and damaging to you. So that's the really bad part about it. And, you could potentially ruin your favorite shirt or something like that if you get it spilled on you. In contrast to that, there are non-toxic, eco-friendly solutions to it. The sanitizer that we're talking about, the BZK stuff. These compounds, again, they're lasting 4 hours to 28 days on surfaces. So, I've even used it in my car and stuff like that. And you can use it to clean anything and everything, and they're not going to destroy your surfaces. If you get it on your clothes, no big deal. You can wash it right on out. And even then, you can even wash your clothes in these products. So if you really want to go that far into having everything possibly in your life sanitized, you can be washing your clothes in it. So this information is all backed by medical research. And it is, again, available on the website, sanitizingsafety.com. And there are alternatives. It's not necessary to utilize an alcohol-based product. It's just simply not. No matter what propaganda might be presented out there, there is the BZK, the benzalkonium chloride alternative. And again, it's all on the website.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up just a little bit. And so the very last thing that I would like to say again, that I've reiterated in all of these videos, is that we're trying to bring awareness to parents and the public. And so if any of the information that we have presented here really resonates with anyone and you would like to take some action in what is happening at the school, One of the things that I think that people need to also be aware of, or parents need to also be aware of, is that a lot of times the teacher will have a canister of Clorox wipes at the door, and then every student takes one as they walk into the classroom, and then they have to wipe their own desk down and things like that. And so again, we're talking about overuse. So if you have, a middle schooler or a high schooler, they can have 8 classes a day. And if every teacher is doing that every single day, then that can really create issues. And so again, I really, really urge parents and anyone else that's very concerned about overuse in not just schools, but in other public places as well, obviously. But mainly because I'm a teacher, I'm going to talk to, my demographic and what I know, and go to the PTO, go to the PTA. They are your very, very best friends whenever it comes to having the administration listen to concerns, get other parents on board, raise awareness, show these videos, have them go to the website, look at the research, go directly to, if you are in a charter district, go directly to the CEO or go directly to the superintendency. You don't have to just go to the school admin. Sometimes it's not their choice on what they choose to disinfect the schools with. Sometimes it's a superintendency level decision. And so wherever you need to go within the schools, I really urge people to do that, because really it's very important. And, that was one of my biggest concerns, actually sending my son to school, not even more so that he would contract the virus, but the toxic environment with which I was going to send him. And so for me, that was much more prevalent in my mind than him contracting COVID. So those are my final thoughts. Please, again, reach out to whoever you need to reach out to so that, we can continue to keep the community safe. We have to talk about all of these different ways to keep ourselves and our community safe. And so, Dr. Shaw, do you have any final thoughts, especially regarding how people can stay safe during cold and flu season?
Certainly. I think we touched on all of it, but the key is to view the the sanitation, the hygiene in a lens of balance, not to be over excessive. That a lot of what has been unfortunately communicated by a lot of the media has created unnecessary fear. And if you can just step back and try to think, well, what would I normally do in a situation if I had to deal with one of my children that had, a flu, or what happened when I was a kid and what my parents do? It's not any different now. This isn't, this new ultimate virus that humans have never seen. Unfortunately, it's been created that way by the media and probably a lot in government for a variety of reasons that we won't get into. But just try to remain calm. And the things that worked when you were a kid are going to work just as well now when you're a parent taking care of your kids. And those involve
chicken soup,
healthy diets, staying outside, letting your kids be able to play and be happy, and for yourselves, just trying to maintain positive moods. Ideally, if you can increase some, vitamin D through supplementation, that's helpful. And exercise, and get a lot of healthy sleep and a lot less stress. And I think that is a really great way to get through this cold and flu and COVID season.
How can viewers reach you if they have additional questions that they would like to ask?
That is a good question. I think we probably should have discussed that before on the show. I don't know if you guys have a way through Jessica's site, if we're going to be talking about those kind of issues, they can reach out to is there an info address there? And then she could kind of just forward me questions. Would that work?
Yes. Yeah. If everyone
Absolutely.
goes, yeah, you want to go ahead and give the email for you and for Dr. Shaw.
Actually, you can just reach us directly through sanitizingsafety.com, and the email is info@sanitizingsafety.com. So, yeah, you can, and if you just go into the website, there is a contact page there. You can put your information in there, questions, and they'll get to us directly as well. So there's multiple ways of doing it.
And then Jessica,
and through Facebook as well. You can find Sanitizing Safety on Facebook.
And Instagram.
And Instagram. Yep, you beat me to that one already.
I have to remember where we're all at.
I know. There's so many of them now anymore.
And then do you have any final thoughts that you would like to add before we wrap up?
At first, I would like to really agree with Dr. Shaw. One of the, never in our past history have we had a population that's actually having so much fear hurled at them continuously. We have healthy people for the first time intentionally isolating, intentionally going for testing, when in the past, none of this would have ever occurred. Even in the previous flu seasons where, we've lost, 60, 55, 65, 75 plus thousand people. No big deal. This past year alone, we had over this year, we've had over 1.2 million die from TB, tuberculosis. Haven't heard a thing about that. So because the media is constantly pummeling us with fear, and the amount of people who have supposedly died from this, even though the majority have had already other diseases, and this is just, on top of it. It's a matter of getting out there, being healthy. We have an immune system. That's what it's for. It's meant to do this. Take care of it. Laugh. Have fun, people. Turn off the TV, turn off the news. Realize that, the majority of people the death rate of this is very, 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 very nominal compared to everything else. Have fun. Live your life. If you live your life in fear, you're going to end up producing endorphins and hormones that actually suppress your immune system. When you're laughing, when you're having fun, when you're enjoying yourself, you're actually healthier. And stop using those horrible alcohol-based sanitizers. There is a safe, non-toxic, environmentally friendly solution out there, BZK-based. Go to the website, sanitizingsafety.com. It's all on there for you. Do the research. Just don't take everybody's word for things anymore.
Well, thank you so much to both of you. Dr. Shaw, it's a pleasure to see you again. And Jessica, it's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
We talk a couple times a week, so.
Yes, thank you.
It's always my pleasure. So next week, we're going to continue the discussion with how do you build natural immunity? So some of the things that we brought up today, we're going to be discussing next week with Doc Rob. So make sure that you guys stay tuned in for that. As always, we put the videos up here live, but then we also post the videos so that they're readily accessible and available for everyone. And so with that, thank you so much. Again, check us out on sanitizingsafety.com. You can find me on Facebook at Awake, Healthy, Informed, and also Naturally Inspired on YouTube and on Facebook and on Instagram, I think. So thank you so much, and everyone, you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.